Let's not call it a disorder. It's just post-traumatic stress. Why is it that so many more claim PTS than actually experience very traumatic things in war? Now I want to explain to you why I think that is. I mean, some people might say, oh, these people are just trying to get over. They're just trying to get benefits from the U.S. government, and claiming post-traumatic stress is an easy thing to claim because it's kind of a subjective thing. Like, I get scared in large crowds and I have nightmares. Okay, great. Here's some money. I mean, I could go and apply for some sort of disability rating from the Veterans Administration because of my combat experience in Panama, and say, yeah, I still have nightmares about it. It really has affected my relationships and blah, blah, blah. I could come up with all sorts of reasons, and I could probably get a good 10, 20, 30% disability rating, which means like $800 a month. I mean, why not? Tax, it's a tax rebate, right? Well, and I haven't done that, and I'm not planning on doing that because I just don't feel like the things that I've experienced rise to that level. Now, maybe for some people they do. That's okay. But why is it that a larger percentage of people apply for those for post-traumatic stress disability rating than have actually been on the pointy end of the spear? Here's why, I think. I think that a lot of things get lumped together and called post-traumatic stress that may or may not be. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm not a psychologist, but I'm just going from my own personal experience. And this is where it really is personal for me. I've been noticing some things about me, about my personality since I got back from Syria that have caused some issues and some difficulties with my family. I'll go more into that in a second. But I think that there's several pieces to this. Well, let me tell you what I've been facing. When I was in Syria, I was only there for 2 weeks, okay? But I saw maybe a dozen dead bodies while I was there. I saw wounds, some very grievous wounds, gunshots, shrapnel, things like that. That's what we were there to do, was to go get those people and treat them. Lots of blood, that sort of thing. I don't feel like it bothered me that much. I feel like when you're in that scenario, hey, everybody there sort of, you play the game, you take your chances. Most of the people that were hurt, most of the people that were hurt were military-age males. Okay, my brain can kind of, it has a box for that. Okay, so I can deal with that. That's okay. However, when I got back, I've noticed some things that I haven't noticed in a while because, as you've probably figured out, this was a much more intense trip than my normal trip. And my normal trips are often pretty dangerous and scary. But this one was worse. And part of it had to do with the fact that we were right on the front line experiencing combat, actually getting shot at. I personally was shot at by a sniper the second to last day I was there, missed me by about 6 feet. And that's not a good feeling. We survived a near ambush. That's something I never experienced even when I was in combat in the military, in the Rangers. A near ambush is pretty scary with machine guns kicking up dust all around. And although I was in the vehicle, I was watching my buddies, running away while bullets were skipping off the pavement all around them. And that was pretty traumatic. That was pretty stressful, Having to listen to the drone go overhead was probably the most stressful thing we had to face. There was just a drone overhead every 20 minutes or so all the time while we were out there. And you'd look up and you could once in a while you could see it, and you could see the bombs on its wings, and you'd just wait for that thing to let loose a bomb on top of you. And indeed, a couple days after I left, that actually happened, and one of the Free Burma Rangers was killed by the Turkish drone strike. So that's something I've never had to face before. I've never really had to face a threat from the air that's sort of ever present and is just there all the time, day and night. And you just don't know, like, how do you run from that? You don't. You just don't know when your world's going to explode. And that's a stressful thing. So when I got back, I've noticed that I've been a little short with my family. My wife took a wrong turn the other day when we were going to a banquet, and I just blew up like, what are you, did you forget that the parking lot's on the other side of the building? Like, what's wrong with you? I don't talk to my wife that way, and she didn't appreciate it, as you can imagine. And that was wrong for me to do. But as I thought about it later on, as I sort of processed that, I realized somebody mentioned, hey, maybe it's PTSD. And I was like, yeah, right. I don't get PTSD. Not me, not Chuck Holton, But then as I thought about it, I thought, it's not exactly post-traumatic stress. It's more the fact that when I'm in that environment, when you're in a combat environment like that and things are just life and death, when somebody makes a mistake, it could literally get people killed. And so this is not time for the typical corporate, hey, could you go ahead and maybe next time, it's not like that. That's messed up. Don't do it again. Make sure that's fixed. Okay. And we don't have time to beat around the bush, and it's just a totally no slack environment. That's just how the military is, and that's how the Free Burma Rangers is. And there was actually one time while I was there that I got yelled at because I was talking on the phone while we were on a mission. And look, I can't afford to have my attention distracted when I'm on a mission, and I was completely in the wrong there. I would have got after one of my guys. If one of my sons had done that, I would have gone after him. So I was totally in the wrong, and I admitted it. And Dave Eubank came to me and said, that was messed up. Don't do that again. And I said, you're absolutely right. So when you come from an environment like that, that's just no slack, it's all men, there's none of this soft little, we got to be careful about each other's feelings and that sort of thing. You just say it like it is. And you come back to the real world where you have to be sensible and you have to be sensitive to people's feelings, and you can't just tell people they're screwed up and they got to fix it right now, especially your spouse. That's bad. Then it just takes a while for you to get out of that mode. And that's not necessarily post-traumatic stress. It doesn't really have anything to do with the stress of being over there. It just has to do with the fact that being in that kind of environment is a completely different lifestyle. It's much more Spartan. It's much less grace-filled. And it's just get it done. Mission gets accomplished. That's the only thing that matters. So then you come back to real life and you get all these intricacies and the little subtleties of relationship cues and, sexual politics between you and your spouse or whatever. And here you find yourself just going, blowing up. This doesn't make it right. It just sort of is. And it's still wrong. It's still something I've got to deal with. And I am. And I think talking about it to you is one way that I can deal with it. But it gets lumped in there with post-traumatic stress. And so it doesn't really have a name that I know of. So maybe we need to coin a term for that. If you can think of one, send me an email. But the other thing is that when you're in that kind of environment, it simplifies life. Life is just much simpler. You just try to stay alive and get the job done, and you come home and you get all this minutia that's, bills and relationships, and your kids are talking back to you and crazy stuff. And you just go, it's just so complex. And it's actually, combat is so much simpler. And you almost want to just go back there. Like, I would just rather be there and have to worry about getting blown up. It's better. It's easier than having to worry about my kid who's being disrespectful and the bills that aren't getting paid or just whatever, So there's that as well. There's that other component. And again, that doesn't have to do with the stress of combat. It has to do with the stress of real life. But again, it changes you. Being in that environment, being over there in a combat environment changes you a little bit.